That's better. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees, and welcome to week 8 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2022 CFL season. We make the joke every single year, oh, week 7, I hope it's lucky. It was. We did very well in week 7. 10-2, back to the winning ways around these parts, which feels incredible. And that includes Street Sweeper Baby on the game straight up. 4-0 straight up last week. 3-1 against the spread and 3-1 on the totals. 10-2, it's an awesome feeling. Now 21-6 straight up on the season. 19-8 against the spread. And 5 games over 500 on the totals at 16-11. It's good for 69.1% on the season. Did have another little bit of a struggle in CFL fantasy last week. Another week of less than 70 points, only 67.2. My MVP from the team last week, Winnipeg wide receiver Dalton Schoen, 4 catches for $146 through the air and a receiving touchdown. Was good for 24.6 points. He led the way from my squad last week, but again, only brought in 67.2. Usually not going to be good enough. Only 589.7 on the season now so far for points. Now, I did not move in the official Atlantic Schooners CFL Fantasy Football League. I remain in 10th place out of 47, and I did actually gain by a little over 3 points on the team that is now in first place in that pool. So the top part of the pool kind of constricting a little bit, couple of teams really struggling. We want to have better fantasy weeks around here than we've had the last couple of weeks. We're going to try to start that this week. My CFL Fantasy Football lineup in week 8 is right in front of your eyes right now, and we are stacking some of the top options from the Toronto Argos this week. I expect them offensively to have a very good week. So we're grabbing McLeod Bethel-Thompson at quarterback, saving a little bit of money over some of the other options at the position. We're stacking him with Andrew Harris at running back, the ageless wonder himself, as well as Curly Gittens Jr. at wide receiver. We're complementing Andrew Harris at running back with Jeshrin Antwi. Stephen Dunbar is my other wide receiver choice this week. He's the reason I went with him over Addison and Tim White is because I am seeing Dunbar getting more red zone targets. So I'm kind of trying to poach a touchdown out of that one. He was also the cheapest option between the three. And in the flex, that allowed me to afford Reggie White, who is a big part of that Montreal Alouettes offense, a pass offense that looked pretty darn good last week. So Reggie White, he's a decent value play at a pretty low cost. So we grabbed him in the flex position. Let's hope for better things than we had in weeks 7 and 6. Your Week 8 slate of games looks like this. The Edmonton Elks are on the bye this week. We've got Montreal in Hamilton taking on the Ticats. We've got the BC Lions in Saskatchewan taking on the Riders. We've got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in Calgary taking on a Stampeders team that's dealing with some stuff, and we're going to have to talk about that. And the Ottawa REDBLACKS are in Toronto, Battle of Ontario, with the Argos. Now, this week's episode is going to be a special episode. We're bringing back a fan favorite from past seasons. It is the first volume, the first edition of the 2022 Do's and Don'ts. So if you've been around the channel for a while, you understand what this is. Rather than going into like statistics from the previous week and what have you, what I'm doing is for each and every team that's playing this week, I'm giving them a do and a don't in order for that team to find success this week. Then we get into the actual predictions. So it's a do and a don't for every single team. People seem to like this from years past, so we're bringing it back here for week 8. We will waste no more time. We will get right into the games, starting with the Montreal Alouettes in Hamilton taking on the Ticats. The Alouettes coming into this game on the tail end of back-to-back road games. They are now 2-4 on the season, having picked up a 40-33 win last week in Ottawa against the REDBLACKS. That was a critical division win for the Alouettes in an East division that is absolutely positively wide open right now. Big division win for the Alouettes, and that was propelled by their quarterbacks who combined for 5 touchdowns. Trevor Harris threw for 2 touchdowns, and Dominique Davis poaching 3 goal line touchdowns in that game last week. Massive performance from the quarterback room. If you're the Montreal Alouettes, do Send the house. The Alouettes are the number 3 team in the CFL so far this season in sacks. They're playing a Hamilton team that has allowed the 3rd most sacks in the CFL this year. This needs to be like a 5+ sack performance for this Alouettes defense. Last week for Montreal, it was even money. It was 2 quarterback sacks and 2 quarterback sacks allowed. I think they're going to get themselves into some trouble if they're not putting more pressure on Dane Evans than that. This has to be a massive performance from that defensive line. And if you're the Alouettes, don't sleep on this Ticats offense. They've been poor for most of this season. I think even they would admit that. But Dane Evans is the number 2 quarterback in terms of pass yards this season and can take over games with his arm. We saw it more so last year than we have this year. But he's coming off of a pair of pretty darn clean performances at the quarterback position. Dane Evans is capable, more than capable, of winning this football game. Montreal can't sleep on this offense. Ticats now sit at 1-5 on the season after losing last week. That game was in BC. Only lost it by a score of 17-12. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the most encouraging Ticats loss of the season because they stayed step for step with a team that has been an offensive juggernaut this year and I think is expected to make some noise in the playoffs. So Hamilton should be encouraged by that loss. It's a loss, but it's still an encouraging one. If you're the Ticats, show me more of this defense. Where have you been hiding this defensive unit all year? This was a splashy performance because they came up with those 2 interceptions off of Nathan Rourke. It was also a stout performance. They only gave up 337 total yards to the BC Lions. That's a significant accomplishment, and this defense stepped up their game last week. We got to definitely see some more of that. Probably their best game as a unit this year. And if you're the Ticats, don't force a run game that isn't there. Look, after last week, I don't think there's a ton of excuses left. Don Jackson was in there. He had 11 carries for 36 yards. They're just not a team that's going to successfully run the football. So their running backs are probably better employed in pass protect, if we're being perfectly honest. I mean, giving Dane Evans some more time back. I'm not saying totally abandon the run. That's not what I'm saying. But that could be a more effective use of those running backs, is holding them back for an extra pass protect. Give Dane Evans some more time with the football because it's the pass offense that's driving the bus right now. Teams that are on the tail end of back-to-back road games like the Alouettes are this week are only 3-4 straight up in the CFL so far this year. One of those wins was the Winnipeg BC game from a couple of weeks ago. The Alouettes are also only 1-3 on the road this season and just 12-17 since the start of the 2018 season. I'm kind of playing the percentages here and I'm fading the Montreal Alouettes winning 2 consecutive road games, which I don't think they've done in a while. I'm going to be on the Hamilton Ticats here to pick up their 2nd win of the season. It's not an upset as far as Vegas is concerned, but there's some underlying stuff in this that I consider being at least something. I think this game's closer than Vegas is capping it. Let's just put it that way. Now on the line, Hamilton's favored by a full 3 points. Usually this would be like a spot for me to say I like them to win and it's a small price to pay. This is a bad hedge on my part, but I'm going to hedge my bets and take the points with the Alouettes. They're a pretty good spread team this year. These teams are so similar, and I'll be perfectly honest, it was kind of a heads-up coin flip as far as I was concerned about who I was going to take to win this game. So I'm going to hedge my bets here and take the Alouettes plus the 3 points, against the spread, and hedge on the possibility that they might win this game outright. Total in the game set at 49.5 points. This is tied for the highest total of this week, but the Alouettes are 5-1 to the over this season, and that includes their last 4 straight games have all gone over, whether they've been wins or losses. We're going to take the over here. It's still #over season, although we're kind of maybe getting a little more tepid on that. We're going to go over 49.5 points in Hamilton, Montreal. We're going to go Ticats 27, Alouettes 26. Hamilton wins, Montreal covers, game goes over. We're going to go to Saskatchewan now, where the Riders are going to be playing host to a BC Lions team that got back on the happy side of power last week with a 17-12 win at home against the Hamilton Ticats. I didn't love how they looked in the 4th quarter. The offense did not look good, but the defense pitched what I like to call a bendy gem. They bent, they gave up plenty of yardage. Like Hamilton was able to move the ball in that game, but they only allowed 12 points on the scoreboard. So that's still a gem in my eyes. It's just one where they bent a little bit. If you're the BC Lions, do stretch the field. The Saskatchewan secondary is not striking the fear of God into anybody. Like, you can throw on this Riders secondary. They don't rank higher than 6th in any appreciable category in terms of their pass defense. And I mean, Nathan Rourke has been Nathan Rourke this year. So if you're the Lions, stretch the field, throw the ball deep, see what happens. But if you're the BC Lions, don't let Nathan Rourke stay in his head. If you listened to Nathan Rourke's post-game comments, he talked a lot about like, oh, it's a bittersweet win. I don't think I played well enough to win the game. And there's a difference between being humble and kind of being in your head. And I think maybe after the Lions' last 2 games, he's kind of in his head a little bit. And luckily, this just comes down to coaching. I'm not criticizing Nathan Rourke for this, and I'm not criticizing his coaches either. This is just a good coaching conversation that you need to have between a talented coach or group of coaches and a young superstar player, which is what Nathan Rourke is. This comes down to coaching, but you can't let that settle. You can't let talk like that sort of simmer in a young player's mind. A lot of football's about psychology, and if you leave that in there too long, now all of a sudden he'll start to believe it. The Riders have dropped 2 straight games to drop their record to 4-3 on the season. Obviously, a lot of extenuating circumstances with the Riders over the last 2 weeks. That includes a 10-point loss last week against Toronto. That game was in Mosaic. Cody Fajardo did not play. Their third-string quarterback was in there. Jamal Morrow got bottled up for only 25 yards on 10 carries, and the offense completely stalled. They only generated 174 yards of total offense. Again, with a third-string quarterback, no disrespect to Jake Dolegala, but, he ain't Cody Fajardo. If you're the Riders, do commit to what makes you great, and that is slowing football games down with the run game. This is both on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. Their run defense is stout. It's one of the best in the CFL, and we know Jamal Morrow can run the football despite what happened last week. You slow the game down, and you wait for your opportunities on defense. I'm not going to call this a great secondary, but it is an opportunistic secondary. You see a lot of interceptions come out of this secondary, even though they give up a lot of yardage, they give up a lot of splash plays through the pass game. Wait for your opportunities and slow the game down. That's when the Riders are at their best. And if you're the Riders, don't force Cody Fajardo back into a do-everything position if he's not ready for it. He's practicing in full, which is great, but that doesn't mean he's healthy. So if you put him back in these situations where he's got to be that do-it-all player, he's got to be making the throws, he's got to be making plays with his legs, you put him back in a position like that where he's going to start taking some hits, and you're really playing with fire. Look, the team that wins the Grey Cup has a season that is 24 weeks long. It's not about 1 or 2 weeks. It's about 24 weeks. Hopefully they put him in advantageous situations. And look, if the game gets out of hand, take him out. Don't be scared to take him out. It's one game. Like I mentioned, Cody Fajardo is back to practicing in full, and I do expect the Riders to be fairly close to full strength after, battling with COVID, coming out, doing Touchdown Atlantic, coming back, third-string quarterback, all the things that went against them. Does full strength equal full potency? Not necessarily. But at the same time, is this the same BC Lions team that we saw early in the season? I don't necessarily know that it is. Look, they beat Ottawa by 3 points. It was 33-30. They lost that, you're not quite there yet, kid game against Winnipeg. And then now they play a team in Hamilton who they should be able to win that game convincingly. And that was a close game the whole way. So we talk about BC as this big juggernaut. Is this the same BC Lions team that we saw a few weeks ago? I don't necessarily know that it is. One thing here that tends to be true is that Saskatchewan Roughriders defense plays real good football in Mosaic Stadium. So I'm actually going to take Saskatchewan to pull a moderate upset here. Saskatchewan at home to upset the BC Lions, and they are the underdogs against the spread. So we're going to take the Riders at home to beat BC. We mentioned the first week of the season, BC's a really good home team, leaves something to be desired on the road. So, like I mentioned, BC is a 1.5 favorite here in Mosaic in Saskatchewan. I'm happy to take the 1.5 on that one. I like them to win the game outright. You don't often get the Riders at plus points at home, so I feel like I'm wasting an opportunity if I don't take it. Total in the game is 49.5 points, which is also tied for the highest number of this week. I think I got to stick under on it. This Riders defense has been playing nuclear football at home, only allowing little over 19 points per game in Mosaic Stadium. Yes, this is the BC Lions offense, but it hasn't exactly looked like the Lions offense the last couple of weeks. So I think the Riders defense can get this thing done, and if they do that, I think the game stays under. So we're going to really stack ourselves here and go under 49.5 points in Saskatchewan, BC. Let's go Riders 23, Lions 20. And before we move on, folks, I'm going to take the opportunity, as I always do, to shout out my great friends and sponsors at NerdTees. Ladies and gentlemen, nerdtees.ca is where you need to go to find dozens and dozens of incredible and delicious loose leaf tea blends and accessories, anything to fit your gifting needs, a gift for yourself, a gift for somebody else, and this is a gift. This is a gift in a cup. It's like a dessert in a cup. This is a dessert blend of tea called Black Forest Cake. Folks, who in their right mind wouldn't want a dessert in a cup? That's exactly what you get with Black Forest Cake, and that's what you can find on nerdtees.ca. You're going to want to use my promo code, which is BWFinest. That's going to save you 15% at checkout. You're also going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100, which is an excellent value with the way shipping rates are right now. And if you're one of my viewers in the United States, you get a great conversion rate on the US dollar. nerdtees.ca, promo code is BWFinest, save you 15%, get your free shipping, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on nerdtees.ca. All right, let's head into the back half of the week now with a rematch of what I think personally has been the game of the year so far in the CFL, but this one comes with a lot of question marks surrounding it. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers in Calgary to take on the Stampeders. Now, the Bombers extended their record to 7-0 last week with a 24-10 win in Edmonton against the Elks. The score in that game remained relatively tight until late in the game. I can't help but feel like the Bombers might have been looking ahead a little bit in this one, which I guess I can understand why, because they knew they had Calgary on the horizon. It was one of the things I mentioned, I think, last week with Winnipeg, like, don't get caught looking ahead, but I think they were probably doing a little bit of it last week. Bombers are, of course, now on the tail end of back-to-back road games, having played in Edmonton last week, and if you're the Bombers, do keep starting on time. And I kind of struggle a little bit with the Bombers because, like, what criticisms do you find for a 7-0 football team? But you look at what the Bombers do really well, and that's start games on time. Last week, they were up 10-3 at the end of the first quarter. They led at halftime 17-6. 2 weeks ago in the game against Calgary, they did trail at the end of the first quarter, but by halftime had pulled the game to a 13-13 tie. This is a team that starts games on time. They don't get way behind early. It's not a concern, but I think it's still a need here in the rematch. Got to start the game on time. And if you're the Bombers, don't expect to win the game with only 16 pass attempts and 22 minutes of time of possession. So last week, they actually ran the ball more than they threw the ball. The split was 16 passes to 21 carries. And Calgary is just as good as Winnipeg is against the run. Specifically against the run, these two defenses are exceptionally similar. So really good run defense. You don't have a Kadeem Carey back there if you're the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You got Brady Oliveira. Don't expect to be able to run the ball the same way. And that being the case, don't expect to only be able to attempt 16 passes. Zach Collaros is going to have to do work to win this football game. You're going to have to possess the ball a lot more than 22 minutes. They're not going to be able to play the same game they played last week. The Calgary Stampeders now sit at 4-1 on the season, coming off of the bye from last week. 2 weeks ago, they did drop that 26-19 game in Winnipeg against the Bombers. Game of the year, again, as far as I'm concerned, from the first snap of the football right down to the end. I think it was the best game of the year. Had every right to go to overtime, and it damn near did. Kamar Jordan's got the ball in the end zone, goes to the ground, can't hold on to it. It was heartbreaking to watch. It not only could he not hold on to it, it turned into an interception, and that basically ended the game. So what a heartbreaker for the Stampeders 2 weeks ago. Now, if you are the Calgary Stampeders, do feed Kadeem Carey, and this could potentially be a problem this week. The Bombers are the number 2 team in the CFL against the run, but Kadeem just hung 110 yards rushing on them on just 12 carries 2 weeks ago. And that was against a fresher Bombers team than they're going to be playing this week. I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. This is going to be the Bombers' 8th straight regular season game without a bye week. They still have not had a bye week yet this year, so fatigue is going to start settling in here. Injuries are going to start piling up. They already have. So Kadeem Carey, if he plays, could it be in for a monster week? And if you're the Stamps, don't reinvent the wheel if you don't have to. Tweak the game plan from 2 weeks ago, but don't toss the game plan out entirely and feel like you have to build a new one from scratch, because the game plan last week was working. They were holding right with them, right down to the wire. Games should have been tied. Games should have gone to overtime. Anything can happen in an overtime period in the CFL. They were right there, and a fluke play meant that they didn't go to overtime. So they were right there. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. They tweaked the game plan. But of course, again, that was when we thought they were going to be at full strength. So I've beaten around the bush here a little bit. The Stamps are dealing with COVID, just like the Riders were 2 weeks ago. It's going through their locker room. Kadeem Carey probably has it. He's listed as out with an illness. Now, Dave Dickinson did say one player in the locker room has pneumonia, but that there are a couple of players that are in COVID protocol, and I would have to imagine that Kadeem Carey is one of those players. But it's going through the locker room. Any play on them this week is the riskiest of risky plays because, as we know with COVID, cases tend to pop up. These are players that share a locker room with each other. So I don't think it's the same situation like we had with the Riders because, again, the Riders got it while traveling and didn't have a bye week in between. So it's tough to say when these COVID cases may have first started. So they may have had the bye week in there and they may kind of be out of protocol by that point. There's a lot of question marks surrounding this game and who's going to play and who isn't. So with all that uncertainty, I want to take Calgary really bad because I think Calgary's every bit as good as Winnipeg is. I just can't take it in this context. So I'm going to be taking the Bombers here in Calgary to actually quote unquote upset the Stampeders because Calgary's still on almost every book favored by half a point. So I guess I'll take Winnipeg in the, what a massive upset. Take them in the upset win and take Winnipeg plus the half point. So here's the thing. There's no way to hedge this because it's only half a point. So this is either going to be a 2-0 pick or it's going to be an 0-2 pick. Total in the game set at 46.5 points. I think I got to stick under on this one. This is the number 1 and the number 3 scoring defenses in the CFL on the season so far. If we don't have Kadeem Carey, that severely limits the offensive upside of the Stampeders as far as I'm concerned. I don't think Bo Levi Mitchell is fixing to put up a 350-yard, 4-touchdown game on the Bombers. I think the Bombers have kind of figured themselves out a little bit here. So I got to stick on the under on this one, and they only got to 45 points 2 weeks ago. So we're going to stick under 46.5 points in Winnipeg, Calgary. Let's go Bombers 24, Stampeders 17. And the last game of the week is a Battle of Ontario. The Ottawa REDBLACKS on the road in Toronto taking on the Argos. And the sun must have just gone under some cloud cover because it just got real dark in here. That was weird. Ottawa still winless on the season at 0-6, dropping their 6th straight game. 40-33. That game was against Montreal. The game was in Ottawa. They held an 11-0 lead in this game, like early in the second. There's the brightness. Like early in the second quarter, they held an 11-0 lead in this game, and then gave up points on 6 of the next 7 drives. So they got a lead. They probably got a little excited with themselves, and were not by any means able to hold on to it. So just again, a mark of a team that's got talented pieces. They're just not there yet. Now, if you're the REDBLACKS, do keep progressing William Powell in terms of how much of a piece of this offense that he has. He's now played 4 games since the start of the season. His run share has gone from 11 carries to 11 carries to 13 carries to 17 carries. So that's going in a nice progression there. I'd like to see him probably carry the ball 20 times in this game, maybe touch it upwards of 25, because I also want to see him be more involved in the pass game. I don't see any reason why William Powell shouldn't be getting 3 to 5 targets in the pass game as well. He's one of their biggest offensive weapons. You got to utilize him as often as you can. So 20 to 25 touches, I think, would be a real nice spot for William Powell. And if you're the Red Blacks, don't snap call on a quarterback change. So look, Nick Arbuckle had that great moment when he came into the game last week. The play that was very obviously a run fake. You don't bring in a pocket passing quarterback to run a quarterback sneak. It just doesn't make any sense. I tweeted it. The second Arbuckle came into the game, I'm like, this is a run fake. And what do you know? It was a run fake. Very cool moment for Nick Arbuckle, and I'm not going to take that moment away from him. But people fell in love with that very quickly. And may not have noticed that Caleb Evans had himself a hell of a game last week. 63% on his passing, 297 yards, had a passing touchdown, did not throw a pick, and added 52 yards on 8 carries and 2 rushing touchdowns. You don't send a weapon to the bench. You just don't do it. I understand people are probably calling for a quarterback change because this is an 0-6 football team. I don't think you see one pass from Nick Arbuckle and go, yep, Nick Arbuckle's the guy right away immediately and make the change. Maybe the Red Blacks look at it differently than I do. The Argos are now 3-2 on the season, coming off of back-to-back wins against the Saskatchewan Roughriders last week. A 10-point win in Saskatchewan, buoyed by a late defensive play that wound up being a scoop and score for a touchdown. But this was a high possession win for the Argos that was focused on stopping the run. And they really did that, holding Jamal Morrow, like I mentioned earlier in the episode, to just 25 yards on 10 carries. They focused on stopping the guy who that offense funnels through, which was Jamal Morrow. They did an exceptional job of that. If you're the Argos, do put the game on Andrew Harris. I mean, look, we will never see another player in the CFL like Andrew Harris. At 35 years old, he's the number 2 rusher in the league. We're never going to see another player with that level of longevity and playing at this level this late into his career. I just don't think we're ever going to see it again. Enjoy Andrew Harris while he's here. Toronto could very easily just put this game on Andrew Harris's back. He can probably run them to a win. But if you're the Argos, don't overestimate your defense. Look, you just had 2 games against the Riders where Cody Fajardo was either limited or didn't play at all. You faced a third-string quarterback last week, still gave up 21 points. They didn't have Duke Williams last week. And the Red Blacks have the number 3 total offense in the CFL. That's a weird statistic, isn't it? Look it up. It's true. They're the number 3 total offense in the CFL. So don't overestimate your defensive capabilities just because you played a COVID-stricken, undermanned Riders team over the last 2 weeks. This is a game they're going to have to pay very close attention to. Ottawa could win this game outright. I'm seeing a lot of hate against the Red Blacks in some of the online discourse around this league. I don't think it's warranted at all because people just look at the record. They don't look beyond the record. They really don't. Or they look beyond the record and say, well, that's not as important as the record. Yeah, the record is the most important thing, but you still need context as to how that record is what it is. So to me, it's ridiculous, all the negative commentaries around the Red Blacks. This is a better football team than an 0-6 record indicates, and I'm not saying anything shocking or earth-shattering in saying that. Now, I'm not going to pick with them just because people are being mean to them on the internet, but people are still being mean to them on the internet, and it's just creepy and weird to me. I think this is a decent spot for the Argos here. They're a very good home team. We're going to take Toronto here at home to get the win over the Ottawa REDBLACKS. However, Toronto's favored by 5.5 points at home. I see this game as closer than that. I'm hedging my bets here, and I'm taking the points plus 5.5 with the Ottawa REDBLACKS, which actually means I'm taking the points in all 4 games this week. But we'll see how that works out for me. We're taking the 5.5. Both of Ottawa's against the spread covers this season have come on the road, and they're actually above 500 against the spread away from home. So we're going to take the 5.5 points. I think it's a closer game than that. Total in the game set at 47.5 points. These two teams are combined 5-1 to the over in their last 6 games collectively, and both of these teams went over in Week 7 and in Week 6. So we're going to go ahead and take the over in this one, over 47.5 points in Toronto. Ottawa, we're going to go Argos 27, REDBLACKS 24. There you have it, folks, the do's and don'ts edition, the first time we did it in 2022. Those are the picks for Week 8 in the CFL. We'll go over them here with you one more time. I've got the Hamilton Tiger Cats beating the Montreal Alouettes 27-26. That game is in Hamilton, which means I'm taking the +3 with Montreal in a game that goes over 49.5 points. I got the Saskatchewan Roughriders upsetting the BC Lions 23-20 in Saskatchewan, which means I'm taking plus 1.5 with the Riders in a game that stays under 49.5 points. I got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers upsetting the Calgary Stampeders. That game is in Calgary by a final score of 24-17. So I'm taking the Bombers plus a half point in a game that stays under 46.5. And we got the Toronto Argos at home beating the Ottawa REDBLACKS 27-24, which means I'm taking plus 5.5 on the REDBLACKS in a game that goes over 47.5. Now, I did make a promise to someone in the comments section last week that I would take a look at the playoff picture in the CFL. It's never too early to start those conversations, but taking a look at the playoff picture, like, I'll give you just sort of some basic thoughts, but I think it's still too early in the season really to determine much of anything. I think you can basically confirm that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers will make the playoffs. That's about what you can confirm at this point. The East Division is wide open. Ottawa could still conceivably win the East Division, and they're currently sitting at 0-6. I think we will probably see a crossover this year. I don't think you'll see a situation where 3 teams in the East make the playoffs. So in terms of the crossover, I think you're probably looking at either the BC Lions or maybe Saskatchewan. It's kind of tough to say. I think Winnipeg and Calgary are those 2 best teams in the West. Gun to my head, if I had to choose the best team in the East, I guess it's probably Toronto. But I think these 4 teams genuinely are pretty darn comparable with each other. If the Alouettes missed the playoffs, I wouldn't be shocked. If the Ticats missed the playoffs, I wouldn't be shocked. If the REDBLACKS missed the playoffs, I wouldn't be shocked because they're 0-6. Toronto would be a bit of a surprise if they missed. So I guess I got to give Toronto the inside track. They're also at 3-2, so they're currently leading the division, but they're leading a division with some not so great teams in it. So that's just kind of what I'm feeling about the playoff picture right now. Genuinely, I think it's too early to make any decisions. There you have it, folks. The Week 8 episode is now in the books. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch and comment and supporting the show the way that you have been this season. It's been truly remarkable. It's been my most successful season to date by far. By far, it's been my most successful season to date. I really appreciate all the support. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the do's and don'ts, the first edition of it for 2022. I'm sure we'll do it at least 1 or 2 more times throughout the season. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again in Week 9.